Here we go.
G'day fans and welcome back to another exciting episode of Rip It Off the Card. I don't know about Aaron, but it feels like I haven't said that in 100 years. It's like, when was the last time we were on, dude? It mean, like last century, like before Ukraine got invaded by Russia? When was it, dude?
I think it was two weeks.
Two weeks. Oh, well, and we know how 2 weeks works in the Total Recall universe, don't we? So
we do.
How you going, man?
Good. I have been flat out busy. How about you?
Oh, mate, I've been the polar opposite. You know, aside from watching grand finals, which were almost a waste of time because we're so one-sided, I've just been kicking back, chilling out. But, mate, you got all the hot stories. What's been going on, mate? Fill us in, Mr. Aaron.
Well, I ended up driving nearly to Canberra last week on the Queen's funeral holiday to pick up a collection because someone tempted me online with Doctor Who and then added more and more and more stuff. So that was 14-hour drive, like 7 hours up, 7 hours back round trip. But that was pretty cool. I was doing it for the toys and then haven't had much time to do anything else. We've had school holidays, so my son's home and he's been unusually, I guess, social and had friends over, which doesn't usually happen. So, yeah, it's been a bit of a crazy week. How about you?
Yeah, you don't want to hear about me. My stuff's just boring. But so your trip to Canberra, I reckon that would have been great, right? So you get in the car, the radio's not working, you go, all right, so what theme tune can I hum to myself for the trip all the way up and on the way back? Woo, woo, diddling, diddling, diddling.
No, did I talk to you about that though? Because I didn't have the radio on, but it was nice to be able to sing all the way up and all the way back without anyone complaining about my singing. So it was 80s in the car all the way to Canberra and back.
So for those who don't know, if you're driving up the Hume Highway in the next couple of days, because Aaron was driving up with his windows down, you see all these dead cows for hundreds of kilometres on the sides. You can just see why, because it's just brains. Now, the funny thing is, Andor, of course, the Star Wars series Andor started last weekend and is out and about on TV at the moment. Even as we speak, there are probably people watching that instead of watching us, which is a smart move, I've got to say. So we've been doing our reviews on that. So for those who aren't sort of aware of it, every Monday night we're doing reviews of the Andor series. But it is out and about. It's the Star Wars series that has just like divided the fan base. If you could get a fan and nerd and split them in two, one goes left, one goes right. That's pretty much what's happening at the moment. It's just driving the whole Star Wars fan base radio rental, Mr. Aaron.
Yeah, well, I missed the review on Monday as well because I've been so busy. So Dags did that himself. We did the Sunday double-header review of episode 1 and 2, though, and had a lot to say about those episodes. I'm enjoying it. You want to see us elaborate more, check out the DNA reviews.
Yeah, so I had to do Monday by myself, and it was arduous. I had to talk for a full hour just Googling on, because I'm just talking to the camera and the microphone. I've got no idea if anybody's even listening, but I did the best I could. It's not like the numbers dropped down from 5 down to 0. They sort of hovered around there for a little while, so it wasn't all bad. I like what Christy said, playing Name That Theme Tune is a great game. Yeah, by yourself, it kind of doesn't really cut the mustard, but there you go, all good.
Yeah, sometimes I sing songs and I don't recognise what's coming out myself.
Yeah, very good. Rusky Babes has brought up the old concave spa parties. Everybody's going, a concave is a shape like that. It's like, what the freaking hell is he talking about? He's talking about the conventions that used to exist back in the 90s. And the reason why we're waffling on like this, kids, is because tonight we actually have no news to present. Normally we have the news section, right? But we've got no news. And the reason why we've got no news is because Aaron's a slack ass. It's as simple as that. He's using excuses of being busy driving to Canberra. What a load of codswallop. He just couldn't be fagged. Yeah, whatever.
The reason why we have no users, Aaron, is the opposite of a slack ass and has been super busy. But we can talk about other stuff because there has been interesting things that have happened.
There is, actually. So now, did you want to get onto the nerdrotic thing? Whatever.
Yeah, we went kind of viral. I don't know if anyone here watches any YouTube shows or YouTube channels or follows any of them, but one of the big geek pop culture channels is Gary, who runs the Nerdrotic channel, and one of our viewers on Rip It Off the Card decided to use his Patreon account to give us a plug. So it's probably the most viral we've ever been because up to 1 million people watch his videos.
So what we're going to do is we're going to play you the audio. It only goes for like 20, 30 seconds. So it's for $100. He kind of didn't get his money's worth. And the Nerdrotic dude kind of got it wrong too. So I'm just going to play the audio. This straight over the image so you won't see the guy's lips move. But at least you get to hear where $100 goes when you're plugging us. Okay, stand by.
All right. We're going to try to get to as many as possible, but it's getting late. Sun's going down. Big guy.
Sun's come up.
It has.
Oh, yeah. It's beautiful sunshine outside.
You better take a nappy wappy.
I'm going to say, don't worry. I'll take a nap.
Ian Peter Davison for 100 Australian dollars. Hello, Gary in chat. I just bought a 7th Doctor figure from the character options, autographed by the 7th Doctor, Sylvester McCoy. That is fucking awesome. That is awesome. Also, would you please give a shout out to Aaron, who does a podcast, Sci-Fi Zone. So it's Aaron. It's called the Sci-Fi Zone. Thumbnail has a red Z, who sold me the Sylvester McCoy. There you go. Aaron.
Oh, hang on.
On the Sci-Fi Zone. Check it.
So there you go. $100 get you there.
What I thought about how that everything was wrong. It's, I guess we're on the rip it off the card, which is part of the Sci-Fi Zone. But a red Z is actually a Putin symbol. It's a red V, isn't it? For FanView or one of the shows we do. I don't know what that is exactly he was talking about.
Yeah, it was kind of funny too. And he also mentioned, I didn't play the extra bit, but he said, oh, maybe it's a podcast that's on audio only. Check it out on Spotify and all that. We're on a lot of things, but we're not on Spotify. So don't go looking for us there, kids, because you ain't going to find us. But Ian, whoever he is, not sure if he watches the show, but clearly he knows about us. Certainly knows about you. Yeah, well done, dude. It's like, yeah, thank you very much for plugging us. So
we thought we'd just say live. We do appreciate that. Thank you so much. That makes you almost gold level writer of the week. So
I tell you what, you're not wrong. So there you go. Very, very cool. Hang on. You meant to say that Aaron hasn't seen the new Deadpool teaser? Is there another one? Is there?
There is, but we could do teasers on this show, but we're really about collectibles, and I love watching all the new teasers. There's been some great ones out the last week or two, but they really work more on DNA reviews than rip it off the card, I think.
Yeah, very cool. William says he watches Gary, so that's good to see. And Guy has said, that's awesome. And speaking of Guy, he made a comment back here about crazy from one person to the next regarding their opinions on Andor. Well, as I said, split the fan base. Absolutely. People going all sorts of directions. So there you go, which is very, very cool. All right, we're going to move on to the rest of the show. Otherwise, we'll never get stuff done. I love chatting nerdy stuff with my buddy Aaron, and everybody's watching the show, but we still got to get things happening. So it means that it's now time, because we've got no news. It means we're going to go straight into this.
Useless Pop of the Week!
Oh, yes. Absolutely fantastic. The funny thing I found in Aaron's store recently, you're running out of pops, mate. What's the deal with that?
We're not running out of pops. We're running the pops down. And that usually means when we say, oh, we're finally getting rid of the pops, someone brings in a massive collection. I actually knocked back a collection of 500 a couple of weeks ago because I do not want to fill the shop up with pops because they're useless.
No arguments from there. Very, very cool. The vial's got it right on there. You ought to be violated. Absolutely. All right, so this one's an easy one, so we're not even going to do a guess on it. But when you look at it, you go, I get the idea as to why they've done it, but then I don't know why they've done it. I know there's bad English, but you'll see it in a sec, because they've made one of these. What the hell's that, Mr. Aaron?
Well, everybody knows people buy pops and everybody knows people buy Coca-Cola memorabilia, so it's a no-brainer, isn't it? But seriously, Funko over the years have done a sort of cereal merchandise and consumable brands. You can see this is number 79, so they've done a few of them. And they've done the mascots from different cereals, Sam Toucan and all those type of things, but American versions, so Chocula, Count Chocula and things like that. And then they've gone away from that to actually making cereal boxes and different things like that they think people will collect. And now they've gone with Coca-Cola bottle top pops. Now, I don't know if you're a pop collector, if this is in the remit of what you want to collect. I guess it works for some people and not for others. But for me, I'm just like, why the hell would you make it?
Well, Ange has gone all completely gaga. Oh, now he's got to go buy one. Yeah, it's clearly, it doesn't even look like a pop. I mean, seriously, it's just ridiculous. But they've clearly got the license for Coca-Cola. And they've said, yeah, we'll do a bottle cap, and away we go. And Mr. Phil has said it was a nice plug as well from the Gary dude, which was particularly cool. Don't know if it was worth $100, but could have said a little bit more, but you never know. We move on. Oh, here we go. Rusky Babes are the fun factoid. Coca-Cola originally had cocaine in it, hence the reason why it was called Coca-Cola. It did. So it did more than just rot your teeth. It made you sort of fly to every destination you ever wanted to go to. So this thing, You do wonder what the deal is. I don't know. It's just, yeah, I don't know.
And
Maybe they'll do bottles next.
If you look at the vials comment, a red shirt pop, it should definitely be shot.
Yes, indeedy doody didy. But as Andrew mentioned, if you're a Coca-Cola person, it's a way of mixing up your franchises effectively. And suddenly people say, I couldn't give a shit about pops. Oh, I click Coca-Cola, bang, I've got to get this. So I get it, but I kind of don't get it. It does. Sorry, it does show signs that they're like getting desperate. They're like running out of ideas and go, let's just do a bottle cap. Who cares? Just do it. So
they're using Coke as a gateway drug.
Yeah, well, that's right. So I don't know. Anyway, it's out there, kids. If you want to go and get it, as Ange probably will, go and have a whale of a time. So very good stuff. Now, this is a moment we've got to tell you about, right? Now, it's been 100 years since we've been on, practically 1,000 years even. Okay, and of course, nobody has any idea what's been going with Greg King's Cheaper Things. Well, guess what? We got some stuff to tell you. So it is now time for this. So Greg King's Cheaper Things. Now, you might recall, fans, from 100 years ago, something turned up. That was the Viggo, I'm going to say Viggo Mortensen, that's the actor from friggin' Lord of the Rings. The Carpathian dude turned up. But there's been developments, Mr. Aaron. What's going on?
Well, this was one of those, it was like where Greg King really paid off, where what turned up was way, way better than I thought it would. So where it says it's a silk screen print or something, it wasn't a silk screen print, but what came was actually better than silk screen. It was on like almost a piece of vinyl, and it really looked like a painting. I don't know what they would have used to print it, but it was a lot better than average sort of printed out at Officeworks. Now, you've seen it, Dags. What do you think of the printing on this?
Yeah, it looked good. It did actually look very, very impressive, eh? So for fans out there, Aaron's gone and got the picture, and we've said, hey, that actually looks kind of groovy. So the next thing you're going to do is stick it in a frame. So before I show the picture, tell us a quick story about what you did with it.
Now, I think I did mention on the show, I would try and find a frame that there was the right size in an op shop and get one cheap, and it would be a project for the future. Turns out the next day I went into work, I was walking up the street by an op shop to get lunch, and there was a frame in the window that looked about the right size and looked ornate enough. And so I grabbed it, and we took it back and took the flower painting out of the frame and put the Viggo the Carpathian in the frame. And I tell you what, it looks $1 million.
So what? So it's very funny you should say that. So you've put the picture in the frame. Now, everybody watching this right now, I want you to pay attention, right? So he's put this $13 picture in this dodgy ass frame. He said, as Aaron just said, it's worth $1 million. So the price tag has gone up, and he's knocked a couple of zeros off. It was clearly $1 million is a little bit too much. So how much would you expect to pay for a $13 picture in probably what is a $20 frame? $199.
We're all friends here. No one's going to tell anyone about my outrageous markups, but I like to think it's a one-off piece of art now, and it's actually the vision that I had for finding a frame, finding an amazing frame, and it doesn't look like a cheap frame at all, and putting it in and putting it up in the shop. And we have already had 2 or 3 people going, I think I'm going to buy that. That looks pretty amazing.
I love it. Joe's already said, yeah, worth every cent. Instant dollars and Ghostbusters. And of course, what you're trying to tell me is that good old Greg King, you've done it again. Is that right, Mr. Aaron?
Yeah, Greg King, you've done it again. Joe came in today and saw it, so I don't think he's being facetious. It looks absolutely fantastic. We've got it behind the counter, and probably every 3rd or 4th customer goes, that looks awesome.
Yeah, and for fans out there, I've just got to show you this. It's very important. When you do go into Aaron's store and you're well aware of what's going on with these particular markups, you have to be wary of this. Yes, it's the capitalist dog. What do you reckon, Mr. Aaron?
I just like to point out, if I was really that capitalist dog, I'd be a lot richer than I am.
He might be holding on to those dollar bills nice and tight, and he's not letting them go for anybody. Oh, absolutely. I love it. Very, very cool. I've got to say that all things being equal, though, I was very impressed with the picture. The frame looks fantastic. And when it's up there, you're thinking the $200 price tag, you go, you know what? You'd believe it as well. Wolf, exactly right. Well, he can't go wolf because there's all these dollar bills are spilling.
Well, the other thing we have to mention, last episode we talked about the headpiece to the staff of Ra. It sold the day I put it into the shop.
You are absolutely unbelievable.
So
Love a cat, me a doggy.
I've ordered another 2 headpiece to the staff of Raz, and so far we've sold 7 of the critters as well.
And just to show how the capitalist dog works, right? I mean, it is a bit of a classic. I've got to tell you this other story, right? I'm just going to hang on. Is this going to work? Yes, it is. So, good old Aaron, right? He's the capitalist dog, as we've said. He's now got Woofy's tail. I was in the store the other week, right? And this family buys this Spider-Man glove thing in a box, right? And I thought, I haven't seen that before. They pay $19 for it, and they walk out the store. And then Aaron says to me later on, I just saw it that morning in the Salvation Army thing, the shop, for $4. So he's bought it, brought it into the store, whacked $15 on it, extra, and sold it. Oh, what does that tell you about the capitalist dog?
It tells you I have to make money to pay your wages.
I get paid, do I? Oh, there you go. It's something new every day. All right, very, very good. Good fun. It was, excellent. But yes, the picture does look good. And I'm not surprised if it does sell. And of course, you know, fans, that if it does sell, Vigo the Carpathian, Aaron will be off to Ronnie going, mate, send me another one.
Well, the thing is, I don't know. It was really pot luck that I got that frame. That was incredibly lucky, because you don't usually find good frames like that. It was just providence to walk by and see it.
Yeah, and I do like it. And if you want, Aaron will even sign it for you too, saying I was ripped off by Aaron Challenger at the store. Oh, very good. All right, so I mean, Rusky Babe's just written War and Peace out. I don't even think I'll get through that message, but everybody else reading that story, you can tell us what is going on. All right, so this is interesting. So on a complete different tangent, you saw the Amazon logo a moment ago. What's going on with this, Mr. Aaron?
Well, apparently Amazon's in trouble. Amazon's in trouble, and I know it must be true because it's come up on my Facebook feed that they want to sell me stuff. I've made that logo ourselves. Amazon is in trouble. They want to sell me stuff, and they want to sell me pallet loads of stuff. And do you know why they want to sell me pallet loads of stuff, Dags?
Because I got stuff that people haven't picked up.
Yeah, which is amazing because no one picks up anything from Amazon. They ship it out. But Amazon is having an unclaimed packages like Bonanza giveaway, and they're selling stuff by the pallet. Now, we're not talking by the box load or, by the satchel. They're selling it off by the pallet. Now, the story that they're saying on the post that I went through from the link is they're being charged $10 billion a year. There it is, $10 billion a year in additional costs just for keeping this stuff because no one's picked it up or it's been returned or they haven't put it back in stock or whatever. And what I found really interesting is, although it has Amazon all over it, as soon as you click through to the link, the guys selling it have nothing to do with Amazon at all. So what I thought, I would take this post and all this information and send it to someone who definitely would have an idea of what was going on. Greg King has authorized me to buy a pallet load of this stuff, but I thought I would run it by everybody's favorite scammer, Ronnie.
All right, so there's a bit of and I like this one. Hang on, Rusky Babes, here you are, right? $10 billion. So we've got some text coming up, some correspondence. Now, I just want to ask you, legitimately, everything that he writes back, is that real? You haven't embellished it all, have you?
I embellished one thing, and he said to me, Aaron, in capitals, and I just changed it to Aaron, because one of our customers says that. But so that's it. Real.
Okay, all right. So this is the correspondence between Aaron and our good friend Ronnie. For those who aren't familiar with Ronnie, he runs he's involved with some kind of overseas, like cheap ass pop culture knockoff store where they sell really, really cheap shit. And either it's the wrong stuff that turns up, or the product looks nothing like the pictures that were sent with it. Right now, keep that last part in mind. All right, so here we go. So Aaron has decided to contact Ronnie to discuss things going on with Amazon. So, Mr. Aaron, over to you.
Hey, Ronnie, hope you are well. I haven't heard anything new about my outstanding stock, but as we are friends, I won't bring up the small home for hobbits. I was writing because I found a fantastic opportunity to buy cheap stock, and it looks good. I wondered, it looks so good. I wondered what you thought. Greg King has authorized me to buy a cheap pallet from Amazon. They are having trouble with unclaimed parcels and cannot afford to store them, so they're shipping cheap pallets to the public. Here is the link. I've taken the link out. Are you interested? Do you want me to buy one for you? You can work it out with me later. Your friend Aaron.
All right. So one of two things can happen. Either Ronnie can go, oh, that is just the greatest thing or in the entire universe. Send me the link. We can do a deal. Or this can happen.
Aaron, no. This is a scam. Scam alert in caps locked. Why would the soul Greg King think he would get fabulous laptop or new iPhone? If you get anything, it will be cheap scam items, and you will make Greg King say, now that's poor value. Do not get it for me. Do not get for you. I know all the tricks they are using, and you will get nothing. Trust me, I am honest with you this time. Your friend Ronnie.
Can you believe that? I'm honest with you this time. What all that previous correspondence going back all those months? What is that? You're right, Ange. It's the pot calling the kettle black big time. The scammer is afraid of being scammed. Unbelievable. All right, so oh my goodness. All right, so what do you reckon Aaron had to say to poor old Ronnie, who's now crapping himself? Yeah, you're right, Christy. This time, yeah, I love it. So what do you reckon Aaron had to say to poor old Ronnie, who's now obviously crapping himself over the fact he may end up with a pallet of Amazon stuff that he doesn't want? Well, let's have a look.
No, Ronnie, I think it's a good deal, not a scam, for a few reasons. One, it shows pictures of a packed warehouse with many items. Two, it is Amazon. They're a big company and they do not rip people off with mail order scams. Three, it has many positive customer reviews. And four, it says thousands have sold and only a few are left. So many people have used this service. Greg King is giving a big thumbs up.
So what do you reckon Ronnie said? So what do you reckon Ronnie had to say about that? Keeping in mind in the previous past and all the times we've had the dealings, he's always bitched and moaned about the fact that people, and obviously not just Aaron, but other people have complained that the product they see on the website does not match the product that they are sent, right? And he's come up with his own justification for that, saying it's like a McDonald's hamburger. It never looks as good as it does in the picture, right? And that was Ronnie saying that. So what do you reckon Ronnie had to say about the fact that these pellets could be available? So here we go.
No. Pictures can be from anywhere. You are too trusting to think this is a real warehouse. Anyone can say they are anyone can say they are anyone. They say Amazon, but probably some shitty warehouse in Hong Kong. No. Customer reviews are nothing. You can just get 10 friends to make up reviews and make them up yourself and disable reviews. This is a simple thing to do. Trust me. Just because thousands of people buy from you doesn't mean any of them are happy. Even me, your friend, gets many complaints. Do not buy. You will be waiting longer than you wait for the Hobbit house for sure. Tell the soul Greg King to put both thumbs down and his hands in his pockets and hold on to his wallet.
I don't know how you can respond to that, dude. Seriously. So isn't that absolutely unbelievable? Yes. Shitty warehouse in Hong Kong like his. And you are right. It is a new realm of surrealness, right? We've turned the tables on this dude. And Joe, you are right. It is unbelievable, isn't it? It's like he's just brought his whole thing undone. You know, if you're waiting longer than you would be for the small house for hobbits, which, for those who don't know, Aaron ordered months ago, paid for the shipping like 4 times, and it still hasn't turned up. Unbelievable. Absolute gold. You've changed it.
There really was only one response that I could give him after him telling me all these reasons why I shouldn't buy a pallet from Amazon.
Buy a pallet.
And that was to show him the receipt for the pallet of goods that I bought from Amazon for $46. And it's a bit hard to read, but on the side, there is all the stuff that's apparently left in the Amazon warehouse that they're clearing out, and your percentage chance of getting one of these amazing items. Now, I only bought one pallet because I'm not greedy. They were trying to sell me a super pallet and a deluxe pallet and to upgrade and stuff like that. But $46 for a pallet load of stuff, I thought, let's give it a whirl and see what happens.
It'll probably turn up before the house for small home for hobbits. So he spent $46. And for those who can't read it, what it might have in it is a MacBook Pro, an iPhones, a Switch, a gaming laptop, PlayStation 5, Apple Watch, gaming headset, all this, a massage gun. Make of that what you will. Here we go. Electric head massager. You're definitely going to need one of those, dude. And a drone. Oh, okay. So you can shoot down some shitty Hong Kong warehouse. Yes, very good stuff. So how about that? So you've decided to lash out and buy yourself a pallet of stuff from Amazon. Is that right?
That's absolutely right. I mean, they said they had sold 12,000 of them, and there was only about 127 left. And I couldn't dilly-dally around waiting for Ronnie, so I just jumped in and bought one, and we'll see what happens. I know it's outside the realm of the sort of collectibles we usually get, but I do think it's in the same wheelhouse of online scams that the Soul Greg King likes to protect us all from.
Isn't that absolutely okay? For those who don't know, I just got these images today, and when I saw that, I go, "Hang on, don't tell me you actually bought a freaking pallet." It's like, dude, did you? And he goes, "Of course I did." It's like $46 for a pallet. What the hell? Oh my god, that's just grouse. Yes, I like it. Kelvin said he can't watch because he's got an internet problem. The problem isn't with the internet, dude. It's the fact that these stories are just so ridiculous that you can't actually believe that they're true. Unbelievable. And you're right, Mr. Phil. Oh boy. There you go. So you're expecting a pallet to roll up to the shop full of stuff. Is that right? For $46.
Well, I'm hoping at least I get one or two MacBook Pros for $46. I mean, that's a big outlay for one of these segments, isn't it?
I'll tell you what, you'll make all your money back on the one first item you sell, and the rest is going to be pure profit. And don't forget that capitalist dog. It will be.
I tell you what, Dad, if I get the massage gun or the head masseur, you can have it, mate.
Yeah, I'd love to, but I'm trying to cut down. Marcus said they'll send you the pellet, and that's it. Yeah, I love it. Very, very good. Pellet with 27. So, yeah, there's been a huge issue with Aaron's been buying stuff from like Ronnie, and they keep sending him the items as smaller than they're meant to be or what they're being pictured. So that actually is a very, very funny gag. All right, good stuff. Yes, I like it. Yes, Greg King has got it. After the reasonable Ghostbusters post, it's time to get some good rubbish for this segment. Absolutely love it.
Well, I could get a whole pallet of stuff for Greg King's garage sale.
Yeah, chuck one of those MacBooks in a gold frame and mark it up. And he will. Don't you worry about that. Remember, you saw it here first. He bought the pallet for $46. If there's like 50 items on board, that's less than $1 each. So there you go. All right, so that's where we are at with Greg King's Cheaper Things. Poor old Ronnie is crapping his dax over Aaron's behalf at the moment. And when the pallet turns up, if it's full of really good stuff, you've got to write back to Ronnie and go, dude, I got scared. Why didn't I listen to you? I've been ripped off.
The other thing I'll just add, I have correspondence with Ronnie that I don't put up because we write other stuff and some of it's just not worth putting up. Yeah. But he did say he watched some of the shows and he was particularly unimpressed. I don't know which one of our viewers it was. It could have been Colin, could have been Guy, called him lower than a maggot on one of the episodes. Or lower than an insect. And he was particularly affronted by that. And I told him, he said everyone was laughing at him. And I said, no, we're laughing with him. He's part of the segment now. And if he disappeared, it would be a lesser show for it. But he does have feelings, guys. He is a real person.
I'll say lower than a maggot. That's a bit rough. He's way lower than that. I like this from Rusky Babes. It'll be a Maltese pellet. Very good. All right. So that's where that segment's gone at the moment. Absolutely fantastic. And of course, the other segment we haven't seen for the past 101 years because we haven't been on for 101 years. Of course, it's now time for the Lord Vile's Vile File, Mr. Aaron.
It is. So we've had a bit of a break and it's because we've been busy, but we've had extra holidays and things have shuffled around. And usually half the time the Vile picks the subjects for this show and the other half of the time one of our faithful viewers will send in a comment or a quip and it'll trigger it. And this is one of these. Yep.
Sorry, just finish what you're going to say.
This is one of these weeks where probably it wouldn't have been this subject, but because of the footy, someone set something in and we've gone off on a tangent again.
Very good. I like this from Rusky Babes. Did he like the fun factoids? Rusky Babes, it's not all about you, mate. It's about what he thinks about people saying things about him. And there were no fun factoids about Ronnie. That's why you let the side down, son. So it's about me, and the other guy who's here. All right. So we've got some correspondence from the Vile mailbag. Is that right, Mr. Aaron?
We have. One of the ones we got this week is this was on Saturday. We got this. Here is my amazing spread for my grand finals barbecue get together. Did the Vile do anything special for his big match? Tannoy voice. I don't know
tell you exactly what the Vile was doing. He was crying his eyes out because he buries for Essendon.
Yeah. So I don't know who that is. But it doesn't sound like a real name, but you never know.
No. Tannoy voice actually watches us on YouTube, and he only watches. I assume it's a he. I don't know. It could be a she. Is on replay. So hello there to Tannoy voice. So he or she leaves comments on YouTube on a regular basis. So yes, he's absolutely.
So, well, Firstly, the Vile says he smells bullshit about that was what you had. He thinks you've taken a photo just from offline and sent it in. And it is a bit of an unusual subject, but we're going to go with it because the Vile, as Dag said, had a potluck dinner because he wasn't really feeling like doing the whole vampire, the whole finals thing, because he does indeed barrack for Essendon. So a potluck dinner, for those people who don't know, you have friends over and everyone brings a random plate of food. It's totally potluck. So we're just going to have a look at what the Vile was eating grand final day at his potluck dinner.
Yeah, humble pie, I think, is the answer to that question because Essendon weren't in the finals.
So here are some of the things that the Vile's friends brought round for him. There is a mashed potato hedgehog with banger and bean topping, and one of the most amazing egg and bacon platters that you've ever seen. And that is actually a portrait of the Vile.
Yeah, that one on the right is an absolute rip. Imagine sticking your knife and fork through that. That one on the left looks a bit dodgy. Anytime you put like the skinless Franks in and the Savoys, it just never going to look good, is it?
Yeah, I think the Vile likes a bit of Savoy action.
I always thought he was a bit of a skinless Frank man myself, but there you go. Speaking of which.
Yeah, well, we've got dogs in blankets. But look at that. They've got little faces with little mouths and little teeth and everything. So you can eat the sausage that looks back at you and smiles. I think the one on the right there is pretty amazing. That's an onion head. So that's a boiled onion that someone brought with a burger with chipped feet. So they've made it into some kind of little creature. I don't know if it's meant to be a lice or something like that, but it's certainly an interesting thing to bring along to the Vile's potluck dinner.
I can't help but think in the left, when you said about the one on the left, it's got eyes and mouths, and I was like, makes you, as a dude, I was like, yeah, I'm starting to cringe over that one. So that is not a good image at all.
Now, the Vile often enjoys a sausage party, and the sausages there are turning up by the carload. But again, they're ones you can eat. But what I think is this amazing curry platter on the right, which the rice has been made into the shape of a little teddy bear, but the curry you eat is all his guts and innards that are in the middle section there. What do you think of that one, Dags?
I can't think of anything, actually. I'm trying to think of a funny joke, and one's not coming out. I'm too busy looking at the dudes on the left in the car.
I'll tell you what, if you did eat the one on the right, stuff would be coming out. You'd had verbal diarrhea.
Yeah, I was going to say, the one on the left, if there are a bunch of hoons in the cake, you'd call them a bunch of dickheads, couldn't you? But, yeah, that teddy bear, eating the innards of a teddy bear as one. Flint sausage, yeah, meet the Flint sausages. Yeah, absolutely love it. But, yeah, that one on the left, yeah, I don't know what the deal is with that. So, absolutely fantastic. Good stuff.
But the Vile has more friends, and some of them are quite artistic. Now, we've got waffles and dinosaur, I guess they're potato gems, but someone's got artistic and made carrot trees with cucumber leaves. And what I think is the most amazing, you've got the dinosaurs in the middle eating something, but that's all ripped open, and there's tomato sauce blood being all ripped out of it. And I think that's that extra step that the Vile appreciates when you take something to his potluck dinner. And on the other side, you've just got a mashed potato lamb with kind of a lovely sort of portrait of the countryside there. So artistic. That's someone who definitely has too much time and has been playing with their food.
As Anne said, yeah, you fall asleep before finishing the one on the right. And that, if you put some tomato sauce over that, that would look very, very juicy. What can I say?
Yeah. Well, do you know who'd like that then?
Lamb and mash. Yeah, absolutely. Sorry, what was that?
Do you know who'd like that then? Bill Cosby.
Anyway, we move on.
Now, here's some fantastic caricatures. When you've got people who are this artistic with food and bring you a Wallace and Gromit omelette with that photo accurate representation of the cartoon, it's fantastic. And then we've got like a Rick and Morty kind of dish there, and I don't even know what that is made out of. I don't know what Morty's hair is, that's for sure.
Problem is, I'm looking at this thing here, the dog, and I'm just thinking of the capitalist dog straight away. It's not far from there. Just put some dollar bills in its mouth, and here we go. We're back to that again. How good's that?
There we go. They're both plates of food that look like they could bite back.
Yeah, I know. Yes, the one on the right, yes, the Rick and Morty one, that looks at like, yes, I do tend to, that'll bring up more than just your lunch, I think. So, yes. Oh, here we go.
Now, here's one that everyone can get on board with. It's an Avo on toast, but it's Jabba the Avo. Which is quite an interesting little dish there. I can just imagine that going down quite well at the Viles potluck dinner.
And you pay $15 for the privilege. Yep.
Yes. And then we've also got all of the snowman from Frozen, also made out of mashed potatoes. Now, if you're going to make a snowman, go with ice cream or something like that. Not mashed potatoes and broccoli. That's almost an oxymoron for a children's meal, isn't it?
Yeah, well, if you're going to use mashed potato, the only thing you can make out of that is Devil's Tower, as you do. I like this, Christy. Yes, cook it and they will come. When it comes to nerds, that is no further from the truth. What can I say? Avocado the Hut. Very, very cool. So what are you trying to tell us about all these fantastic vile potluck dinners there, Mr. Aaron?
Well, when you put it together like that, that's almost a woman's weekly special right there, isn't it? But the Vile invited them, they came, they brought potluck dinners, and then they all sat around and violated them.
They have indeed. So there we go. Vile potluck. I imagine some people are going to be watching this show thinking, oh, I want to make one of those. That looks really, really cool. What a great idea. So,
yeah, maybe we could have the Vile recipe cards that you collect week by week to become a collection.
Love it. Exactly right. Oh, yeah, that's very, very cool. What? Jabba the Avo was made by the Union of Frogs Rights. Yeah, right. Okay. So, yes, good stuff. Anyway, sometimes the Vile tries to be humorous and it kind of doesn't work, but don't worry about it. You have your own segment. You're more popular than the two of us, so you can't complain. What can I say? All right, it's now time for a bit of, interaction with the audience and crowds. Ange, put your bid in because you know you want to. It's now time for this.
Ooh, baby, do you know that's what...
All right, Mr. Aaron. So what are we talking about for our eBay section of this evening?
Well, this was a bit of a comic book watch. Every so often we do a comic book one because we like to follow the roller coaster ride of highs and lows of comic book valuation. And this is one of those weeks that's got some mighty highs and some low lows. So we'll have a look at some of the comics that have gone on eBay in the last couple of weeks.
Now, typically, Ange puts in a bid before the items come up, and he usually sticks in like 20 cents, 30 cents, 40 cents. Now he's gone for 62 grand. And I tell you what, when the first item comes up, he might be heading in the right direction. Oh, check it out.
This is an interesting one. It's one of those, if you dig all the way to China, and Superman has. But there you go. It's a vintage Superman all-color comic, volume 1. So a lot of people may know this, but DC and Marvel made comics in the US, and then the rest of the world either imported them or did local reprints. And this is one of the local reprints of the Superman. So it's slightly bigger. It's all color. Some of the reprints weren't even color. Sometimes these reprints are just as valuable as the originals. Sometimes they're worth absolutely nothing. So this is one of those that I'm not sure how much I would bid for this because I'm no expert.
So for those out there, put your bid in for what you think it's sold for, and it's obviously Australian dollars. No, don't Google it. Don't look it up. Just take a bit of a guess. You don't win anything if you get it right. And the funny thing is, on the news tonight, they mentioned that Superman's costume, Christopher Reeve's one, I don't know if I assume it's from the first movie, one of them, because there would have been lots of them, is going up on auction. I think it's this weekend. So you may have to cop up a few pennies. It's a full suit too, apparently. So you would have seen that in your travels. Have you seen that, dude?
I've actually seen one of the suits turned up on was it Porn Stars or Las Vegas for one of those shows, and the guy didn't buy it because the guy who was selling it obviously knew what it was worth and didn't want to let it go cheap. But that show has aged. It's 10 years old now, and now the suit's probably worth 3 times what they were trying to flog it for on the Porn Star show.
Well, I reckon this particular one, 800 and something grand is what they're looking at. Anyway, so Andy said 62 grand, but he said that before he even looked at the item. So I don't know if he wants to keep that or not. Guy has gone for 19,500. Rusky Babes, yeah, good on you. Sixpence, yeah, good on you. 55 for Colin. 1,050 for Phil. Christy's gone the 10-cent route. I love that one. Robbers at 200. Williams at 2,500. So Marcus said 10 super reprint dollars. $10. Okay, cool. So what does everybody else think? Vintage Superman, all color comic #1. Numero uno, front row of the grid. What does everybody think? Now, here, yeah, say he's dug away from, right through, he's dug his way to China. What if you started digging in China? Where do you end up then? That's a question for you. All right, so how much do you think it went for? The old Vintage Superman, all color comic #1. It went for a whopping $3,741, Mr. Aaron.
I know, that's a lot for a reprint comic, but the trend has been lately that overseas reprints that used to go for nothing have suddenly got overseas buyers wanting them. So surprised me a bit. Literally 10 years ago, you couldn't get more than $10 for this kind of thing. So anyone who specialized in Australian stuff has hit pay dirt recently.
Yeah, William, you got it, but you have to cough up an extra $1,000 and $200, dude. So, yeah, Mark, yeah, exactly right. So sometimes these things pop up and you go, oh, didn't see that one coming. Maybe you can check this out.
So this is just a collection of X-Men comics. They're from the sort of early hundreds, which is a good run. They were popular ones. I think they were 70s issues. So someone sold them as a lot. I don't know if there's any particular key issues there. They've just got Marvel X-Men 95, 96, 97, 99, 100, 129 and 130. So just a spread of X-Men comics.
What does the IG Slim word mean at the end? What's that represent, dude?
It means that they're putting stuff up that most people reading will not be able to understand.
And I assume you're one of them. Is that right?
Exactly.
Good stuff. All right, so there you go. Some X-Men comments, something for you to read on the way home if you're on public transport. What do you reckon they went for? They just chucked them up there. Very good. And just said 452. Colin's gone from 120. Phil's back to 1050 again. Christy put in a bid this time, 559. Robert said 500. Everybody's putting up some dollars there because they think all these things are worth something. Guy has said 600. Oh, Greg King, $2 each at the garage sale. Where's your optimism? Unbelievable. Marcus said 50. William has said 1,500. Oh, Greg King is knife to the heart, son. Supposed to be sitting there going, mate, this is going to be worth a fortune. So, what is the go? The timing could be everything. I mean, if there was a new X-Men movie coming out, the value of these might go up. You never know. All right, so as you can see there, Marvel X-Men, they've got the IG Slim at the end, whatever the hell that happens to be. 95 to roughly 130, just a random bunch of comics. Who really cares? What would Professor Xavier have to sell these for? He went for a whopping $1,200, Mr. Aaron.
Yes, well, there was some key issues there. 95, 96, 97 are where X-Men went from being the original X-Men reprints to introducing Wolverine and some of the new X-Men. So they're a particularly desirable amount of comics. But I do think that the person who sold these just bunched them together, whacked them on eBay, and they went for a massive price.
So there's a good chance that somebody out there who buys these will separate the dodgy ones from the good ones and resell them. So and get their money back and then some. So yes, very, very cool. Used to be a band called Uncanny X-Men. Well, yeah, got on for copyright. I don't know. Yeah. That's a very good question because they sang a song called 50 Years. And funnily enough, that song was 30-something years ago now. So we're getting closer and closer to the 50 years. I actually like it. Where will we be in 50 years? I don't know how they got around that one. So yeah, it's a mystery to me. So the
Uncanny X-Men actually were a Victorian band that formed in Ringwood Tech, just around the corner from where I grew up. There's a useless factoid for you.
Yeah. Oh, where's your? And I used to have the other song. Everybody wants to work. No, not me. Anyway. Not me. Yeah, exactly right. No, the feeling. All right, here we go. So we're going. We're hulking. What's the deal with this, Mr. Aaron?
We're hulking, and She-Hulk's just come out too. Now, this is another example of Newton Comics of the Australian reprints, and these are the issues I was talking about. You could not sell for anything. Will these go for more? So these are actually reprints, and they used to reprint them over and over, and they were black and white on the inside. Even the color on the cover is not as good as the covers that they were reprinting. So this is a lot of 5 Australian Hulk comics.
So keep in mind, fans, that it does say that it's Hulk Newton Australian comic set. And as Aaron mentioned earlier, sometimes Australian stuff can command some big prices if they're being purchased overseas. So just because it may have been locally produced for us doesn't necessarily mean that they were going to go for a song now. So Guy has said 80. Violating the Hulk as the vial often should is the vial at 550. Where are we? 155 for Colin, and Christy has gone for $27. So there you go. And there's a lot of people typing a lot of messages, but I'm not hearing a lot of bids. Angie's gone for 50. Rob has gone for 700. Oh, here we go. Mark has gone for 2,500 greenbacks. Yeah, I love that. That's very good greenbacks. Excuse me. Phil's gone for 300. William has gone for 1,200. Yeah, nobody has any idea what these things are worth, eh? So,
Yeah.
Huh?
Yeah, I was just saying no one does. It's all over the place.
Yeah, it's all over the place. Yeah. So yeah, it's got posters and swap cards. It is very exciting stuff. So what does everybody think these went for? The Hulk Newton Australian comic set issue. You can see their posters and swap cards. Good condition, very good condition. It's very, very exciting stuff. How much you reckon it went for? It went for a whopping $1,100, Mr. Aaron.
I know. That is unusual. I'll tell you what, though. The posters and the swap cards are never in these comics. They're always missing. So that is unusual. And the thing they used to do, you'd get the Hulk comic and it'd go with a 4-color poster. And the color poster might be the Lone Ranger or Charlie's Angels. They never had anything to do with the comic they were in, which was really, really bizarre. But there you go.
Very, very cool. Good stuff. So, Mr. William, you even get like $1,100 back. So how good is that? Yes, you are right, Mr. Phil. You should have stuck with the original price. You would have been right on the money. Speaking of being on the money, how would you go with this?
Now, here's another interesting one. I mean, we've been pulling stuff up that not many people know, but this is the Marvel family. So this isn't Miss Marvel as in the Marvel character. This is the Marvel family as in Shazam, which is the DC characters. Gets a bit confusing, but as you can see, this is another local version where they've reprinted it and it's a different format. It's like some of the really early Phantom comics, actually. They did them like this. This one's an old comic and it looks in fantastic condition. So this one's probably going to go for a bit of money.
Well, it had 14 bids, so clearly there was a bit of interest here, unless they all bidded, that's bad English, they all bid 1 cent each, so we'll have to wait and see. So there's 14 bids, and Andrew's gone for 1,400, so he's working on the views of $100 a pop per bid. So what does everybody else think? Don't look it up, take a guess. The Marvel family, number 3, what do you reckon it went for? Philip Stickens with his 10.50. Colin has gone for 28.50. The money's coming in now. Guys for 2,100. Rob has gone for 3,200. No one's going chicken feet on this one. So what do you reckon after all the previous ones have been quite high? What does everybody else think? Will Greg King chuck in his $2 because the scurvy dog that he is? Christie's gone low. There we go. $1.40. Absolutely love it. Williams at 1,800. Mark is at 300. Violating the Marvel family one at a time as you do is the Violet at 1,200. Babu freaking bucks. Oh, yeah, I absolutely love that, which is very, very cool. All right. So what does everybody think? The Marvel family number 3 comic A-Force of publication printed by the Argus. That's Australian, isn't it, dude? That used to be the Age. Yeah?
Mm.
Yeah. Very, very cool. So 14 bids, very, very exciting stuff. And it went for a whopping $1,322, Mr. Aaron.
I know that was another one that I really had no idea about. You don't know if some of these characters are more popular in America, so they go back, or you don't know if Australian fans are starting to buy a lot of this local stuff because of nostalgia and local history. But definitely, if you see any of these old comics around in op shops for 50 cents or $1 each, pick them up. Chances are they're worth a lot more than you think they are.
Totally agree. Andrew's got it, and he gets like $60 back or something. So well done. All right, now we've saved the best to last. Now I know a few people haven't bidded; they've just said, not interested, not interested." But the last item, we want everybody to put in their bid for it because it's a highly rare, extremely hard to get Australian-produced product, and it is a comic. Okay, so for those people who are not paying attention on their phones, on Facebook, and all that other rubbish, just focus on this for a second because we're keen to see what people think this went for. Okay, so it's extremely rare, extremely hard to get and find, and it is Australian, so it'll be worth a fortune potentially overseas. So what do we got?
Well, I don't know if you're being facetious. This is
I was trying really hard to get. I did well, didn't I?
You did. But I actually bought these when they came out. There was only 3 issues. The radio talkback show, Martin Malloy, was so popular in the 90s that they actually got their own local comic, which did so incredibly bad. It sort of bombed and wrapped up after 3 issues. And this is issue 1. Now, I had the original 3 comics, and I probably sold them 20 years ago for about 50 cents each. And I've always regretted it because I have never actually seen another one of them. And then this one turned up on eBay. So this has a lot of Australian comedy roots. They go back to the original D generation, and both of them are still very popular Australian celebrities who turn up on Have You Been Paying Attention and Front Bar and other shows. So do you think the comic would be of value or of interest to collectors though, Dags?
I would have to think it'd be worth an absolute fortune, but clearly our bidders don't think so. Angie's gone for $1, which is disgraceful. Rob has gone for 50 cents, which is even more disgraceful. Phil has gone for $1. Mark wants to borrow $2 off Greg King. That's not very friendly. Good on you, Mr. Collins. $7.50. That's unbelievable. I like it free with a $2 comic at the garage sale. Come on, put in a proper bid. Stop piss farting around. Guys said $15. William has gone for 20. That's at least something. Christy, the obligatory 1 cent. That's not even half a cent per person. The Vial has come along, violating Martin and Malloy at $125. Got to US the Vial. At least someone's put in a decent bid for a change. What does everybody else think? The Martin and Malloy comic book issue 1 cover. Come on, put your bids in there and see how it went. Is this like an absolute Australian treasure? As Aaron said, there was only 3 issues produced. It could be worth an absolute fortune. 1 bid, someone will potentially walked away with an absolute gold mine. What do you reckon? Hey, and you are right. Yeah, Tony Martin is a big comics fan. It's probably why it got produced in the first place. All right, so Martin and Malloy, comic book cover, issue number 1. Absolutely fantastic. Probably rare as hen's teeth. We set the standard with the previous items. How much do you reckon it went for? It went for a whopping 1 cent. And I'll give you one guess who got that.
Now, I reckon that's a bit of a line call because Colin said $7.50 and there's $8 shipping on that.
Yeah, but we're not taking the shipping into the thing, do we're going for the basic price.
I know. I just think it's pretty poor that went for 1 cent and Christy got it. That's what
now we've discussed this before. How can something sell for a cent? I mean, sure, you got the shipping. You just throw it out the window, throw it in the rubbish bin. It's not. You can't even physically send it for that much. That's crazy.
And do you know what the crazy thing about that is? I actually saw one at a Comic Con for $200 and it sold over the weekend.
Really?
Yeah.
I like it. Chrissy said, does it come with matches? Yeah, exactly right. Yeah, matches, Martin and Malloy, they're a match. Unbelievable. I can't get my head around when something sells that cheap. You go, well, what's there to sell? I mean, is the person going to pay the $8 postage and go, yep, beauty, the cook on gas? It's stupid. You physically can't even hand over 1 cent, even if you wanted to. So I don't know. I don't get it.
You can with PayPal electronically, I guess, but I know what you mean. It's ridiculously low amount.
Yeah, it's not even worth the effort. What can I say? Eh? So, all right. So, give me a second here, kids. So, guess what? That is the end of our doodads and thingoids. Now, before we go any further, very, very important, we just always got to do the obligatory mention about the our socials. If you haven't done so already, be sure to check out our socials, Instagrams and Twitters and all that other rubbish to find out what's going on in the Sci-Fi Zone universe. It's all very groovy because there are other shows besides this one that are occurring at the moment. And for the first time, we're going to do a bit of a plug for good old Aaron's store. There it is here. You can check out there. Check out the Mr. Aaron himself. Go in there. Check out the fantastic Greg King's Cheaper Things items. Absolutely fantastic in the Main Street, Blackburn. Go over there. Talk to the lad. Anything you want to chuck in before I move on?
Yeah, all the Greg King stuff is in the Greg King cabinet, except Vigo is above the counter because he's looking pretty awesome. Generally, anyone who comes in from the show and mentions it, you'll get a discount too. So it's worth coming in.
Very, very cool. And all of those things, the Greg King things, do actually have price tags on them, which is particularly cool. So if you want to buy anything, and I've got to admit, the Maltese budgie actually isn't that bad, I've got to say. So I reckon that's kind of exciting stuff. All right. Greg, what does it come with matches? Yeah. Okay. So, all right. Guess what? Now it's now time for our feature presentation. And because it's a Docky Who thing, I'm going to departe And Mr. Aaron has got plenty of time up his sleeve to talk about something which is very, very exciting for him, but not exciting for me. So I'll leave you all to it. So,
I will still ask you some things about this though, Dags, because it is sometimes interesting to get a non-fan's view of some of the stuff that was going on. But we're getting to our end of reviews on the Docky Who, the classic era, which is basically from 1963 to 1989, when the BBC finally put their foot down and said, enough of this nonsense, we're not making any more Doctor Who, well, not for the time being. So we're looking at the Sylvester McCoy era, which was the final Doctor to play, the final actor to play the Doctor on the TV series, and he's the Doctor that did the last 3 series, and then there was a massive break before they did the American telly movie, but we're looking mainly at the merchandise that was produced at his time and some of the stuff that was happening in fandom and in politics and behind the scenes on the Doctor Who set as well. Why the show was never actually cancelled, it just was never renewed. A BBC plot to avoid anyone sort of arcing up about the show being cancelled again. So we're going to be looking at that period of time and the merchandise that was brought out at that time. And we're going to start not with merchandise, but with the news of the Doctor being cast. And we looked last time we did a Doctor Who one on the Colin Baker era, and Colin Baker came to an ignominious end when he was fired supposedly because the Doctor only ever stays about 3 years, and he's had 3 seasons, so the BBC wanted someone different. Was it politics behind the scenes? Yes, it was. But Doctor Who fans were just very happy that the series continued, and a new Doctor was announced, and the Doctor was Sylvester McCoy. And you can see there that Colin Baker didn't come back to do the regeneration because he had been sacked and didn't feel like coming in just to do a regeneration. So you've got Sylvester McCoy, and the first scene he was seen in was in a Colin Baker outfit with a Colin Baker wig, and he regenerated into himself. We still had Bonnie Langford playing Mel as his companion for his first series, and the first story was Time and the Rani that brought back Kate O'Mara as the Rani. I've always said McCoy had 2 expressions, comic and comical, and that has gone through his whole career, where he has played bigger roles in Peter Jackson's The Hobbit and a couple of other things. It is interesting, a lot of people bag Sylvester McCoy as being one of the poorer actors to play the Doctor, yet he has been one of the ones to go on to do the most successful things after the show finished. So I don't know about that, but Peter Jackson was a big fan, so that's why he was in The Hobbit, and he's just been in The Munsters because apparently Rob Zombie was a big fan too. So if anyone wants to check out that movie, Sylvester McCoy is the butler in that. So here we have some of the stories, well, all of the stories Sylvester McCoy was in. The BBC had cut down the number of episodes per season. So his seasons were the shortest, and there was only 4 stories per season. And you can see there we have the return of the Rani in Time and the Rani, and in Paradise Towers, robotic evil cleaning devices. We've got Delta and the Bannermen with green babies. He was actually a good Doctor, but some of the stories were the worst. I think his era had some of the worst stories and some of the best. It's really interesting. The first year they obviously retooled everything, and it was comedy and aimed at kids, and then it came back and had some of the most renowned, I guess, shows of the era of the run as well. So there are highs and lows in his era. His second season there, you can see the Daleks returned in one of the favourite Dalek stories, Remembrance of the Daleks. You had killer robot clowns in Greatest Show in the Galaxy, the Candyman in the Happiness Patrol. The Cybermen returned for the Silver Anniversary in Silver Nemesis. And then you had Battlefield opening his first season, where you had basically Bad Mona from Willow returning. It was actually Jean Marsh playing Morgana, but it was exactly the same character. And the Brigadier, and then Ghostlight, a very cerebral story about evolution, and one that you can watch a couple of times and still not know what's going on. The Haemivores return, Vampires from the Deep in Curse of Fenric. And the last show of the classic run, of course, had to have the return of the Master. So even though Sylvester McCoy had the shortest run of episodes, he pretty much saw the Daleks, the Cybermen, the Master, and had a bunch of comedy shows, a bunch of gothic shows, and classics and absolute clangers. So it is a very tumultuous era. It has its fans and devotees, and it has people that will not watch it. It is one of those interesting periods of the show. Nevertheless, it's now part of history, and a lot of people have had revisions on how they feel about the Sylvester McCoy era. But we're here mainly to look at the merchandise. Now, something happened in the Sylvester McCoy era, and this is one of the things I was going to ask about Dags, because he's got an eye for design. The logo changed. And it went from the neon logo you can see on those first couple of magazines to this almost comic logo that, to begin with, they really didn't know how to use. And it was very different from a Sci-Fi logo. As someone, who's in the Sci-Fi scene, what do you think when they changed the logo to that?
I don't think I have an opinion, to be frankly honest with you. I mean, they design to change things all the time. So
Okay.
I actually look, sorry, the one on the left, I actually quite like the one that's up here. But I mean, the box thing up there, I don't know. Yeah, you're asking the wrong person, dude.
No problem. I was just trying to get your opinion on something as a non-fan. A lot of fans went ape over this. They thought that logo was too comic, didn't suit Doctor Who, was too whimsical, didn't work on merchandise. Now it's one of those things you look at and go, fandom's just like pick on everything, because it is very of its time and it's very representative of the era. I do remember the first time I saw the logo on that magazine on the left. That was where it kind of debuted, and I thought, that looks crap. I had been copping it for being a Doctor Who fan for a long time, and like my friends were saying, we can't watch it, it's made for kids, it's too kiddie, it's silly. And they went from sort of a neon logo that was very sci-fi to this, I don't know what they were trying. But anyway, it's all part of the history of the show now, and no one really thinks about those kind of things unless you lived through it. So Doctor Who magazine announced the debut, or announced that Doctor Who was being replaced by Sylvester McCoy and Bonnie Langford. And a couple of issues later, you had his iconic costume, which is covered in the question marks and has the question mark umbrella. And they introduced his other companion, Ace, who wrote out the next two series of the show as the final companion for the original series. The first couple of magazines there were from a period of the magazine where it was a little bit flat. Fanzines had become sort of where the news was and where the gossip was, and Doctor Who magazine had taken a step back for being that kind of news magazine, because obviously the BBC and the producers, being an official Doctor Who magazine, didn't want them to have gossip and negative reviews and things like that. So the Doctor Who magazine was full of pretty pictures and story outlines and interviews, but it didn't have a lot of in-depth articles, and it didn't have a lot of critical reviews at a time when that would have been a fascinating thing to see, just as a time capsule to what was going on. And they didn't even really print many negative letters. Ace was one of the best companions, so that helped a lot. It absolutely did. The chemistry between Ace and the Doctor is some of the best chemistry that the series saw, and it was particularly lucky that we got Sophie Aldred, and that happened in the last couple of years of the show, because the BBC really didn't care by this time. They were slowly suffocating it, and they were hoping that the show went away, which it eventually did. So if we go to the next slide, you can see the Doctor Who logo shrank down a bit, and it became, I guess they worked out how they were going to use it, and it looked a bit more dynamic when they didn't use it across the whole top of the page and worked out a color scheme to put it onto the merchandise. The Doctor Who during this era, I guess from Colin Baker and Sylvester McCoy, the magazines did look good just because it became a very colourful show. Doctor Who magazine was sanitized at the time, and it still is. They still sometimes do something controversial, but not very often. So Doctor Who magazine was always eye-catching, and if you look at the magazines at the time, and Dags and I have done it when we looked at the Star Logs, Sci-Fi magazines had pretty interesting covers, but Doctor Who magazine was always up there with eye-catching covers, just because the content of the show was so diverse and so colourful that it almost was produced for great advertising. At the time as well, before the internet, fans got a lot of their images from print and print magazine. And it was a big deal when Doctor Who magazine slowly over the years went from 4 pages of full colour to 12 pages of full colour to all full colour as it is now. Because I guess it was one of those things they had to do to compete with other magazines, and particularly fanzines that were making a rise at the time. And fanzines through the 80s went from photocopied and very amateur to slick publications that actually rivaled Doctor Who magazine. Well, the fan press was scathing to the producer and the news stories that they had to be nice in the mag. And that's true. I guess it does mean that there's a balance. And if you are probably a child and you love Doctor Who, you probably don't want to read about all the scandals the producer is happening. And you do want to read season polls on who's the favourite monster and things like that. So there is room in fandom for all levels of publications, I think. But Doctor Who magazine at the time, as Jonathan said, was quite sanitised. And I guess that balanced out from the next slide, because I think the next one's Doctor Who Bulletin. And Russell, anyone who lived through this era will remember, this was the major fanzine, and it was the anti-Doctor Who fanzine. And us fans are terrible, where we will criticise something. The show is horrible. The producer needs to leave. The stories are crap. The BBC's cancelled it. Why has the BBC cancelled it? It's an iconic show. It needs to come back. And this is kind of the what we see in Doctor Who magazine. Now, I've pulled out some interesting issues there, because for a fanzine on Doctor Who, there's an awful lot of stories on the producer. And if you were just a casual reader and you were seeing that 98% of fans want new producer, no more JNT, JNT must go. And then the hilarious one there, after the magazine has for years and years just baited him and dogged him, solicitors act for JNT. And what did the fanzines do when, they've slandered him for years and said stuff and put interviews that asked for him to resign and all that? They then print all the solicitor material that they're sent and turn that into, look what JNT has done. Now he's suing us because so I think the poor guy couldn't catch a break. Some of the stuff he produced was questionable, and some of the things he did in the show wasn't popular. But I look at it now and think, oh my goodness, it is lucky that he did not be producer during the time of the internet, where everything is instant. Something can be shown and people can get onto his Twitter feed or Instagram and just basically destroy his character. I think if fandom had been around and JNT had been around back then, it would have seen some incredible internet activity, and probably quite libelous stuff would be said, because you look at those magazines and you do think, are these Doctor Who fans, or are they people just going after JNT because he's done something to them and they hold a personal grudge? That said, when the stories were good, and an example of that is the rise and fall of Remembrance of the Daleks, after Doctor Who fans had 1 year of shows that everyone seemed to hate, it came back and knocked it out the park with one of the best shows of the era. And the magazines did give it good reviews, and they did give him his due for pulling it round. But then, of course, said it's mainly the script editor. But there you go. But that is a very interesting little time capsule from the era if you go back through fanzines through that time. And interestingly enough, I was looking today, the very first couple of issues of Doctor Who Bulletin were the black and white photocopied little ones, and I've never owned an issue one. One turned up on eBay, and I haven't seen one for sale for years. And this photocopied little fanzine has a week to go, and it's already over £100. So if you're a collector, fanzines are a very specialised area, but also they are highly collectible because in some ways they give you more of a window into the area that they were produced in than the official stuff ever does, just because they're rawer and more emotional about the material they're presenting. So we've looked at the magazines and the fanzines, and the other things that came out straight away for the McCoy era were the Target books. Now, again, one day I will do an entire show just on Target books and the amazing history and stories of those, but we're just looking at the McCoy ones for this episode. And I was looking at the time, and Christmas Blitz, 100 titles at 99 pence each. And there's some titles there that go for quite a bit, and there's some titles there that still only go for about 99 pence each. Now you can see with that proof down the bottom, that's a cover proof. It was a cover that was never used. It has the older logo on it, the neon logo. But the interesting thing is when the book company got it, they didn't realize that the tetraps were meant to be like bats hanging from the ceiling. So when they did the cover print and sent it back to get proofed, they go, well, hang on a second, you've printed the picture upside down. So by the time it got reissued and changed, they were able to put the new logo on it. So you can see the original on the bottom left, and then the right, the actual book that came out where the cave is the right way up, and they've got the actual correct logo from the Sylvester McCoy era there. So that was the very first Sylvester McCoy book. And because he didn't have a lot of stories, there weren't a lot of books in his run. So we can look at them a little bit more closely than we usually do when we do these segments. If we go to the next slide, you look at the next couple of books. Now, I'm showing them in story order, but you've got to remember Target didn't actually release stories in story order. They just hopped all over the place, and they would release stuff from the William Hartnell era that hadn't been released before, and then they'd skip forward to the latest episodes. And often if you get a writer that has time in his schedule, the last story from the season will be novelized before the first one. The one thing about this era that is a lot different from other eras is the artwork is very consistent. A new artist at the time, Alistair Pearson, started to do the artwork for the episodes and for the books. And we'd spoken before in the older ones how the photographic covers had been cheap, but fans didn't like them, and they'd gone back to art. But they hadn't really featured the Doctor on the cover because W.H. Allen, who did the books, didn't want to pay the extra likeness rights to the actors. Because Alistair Pearson was more of a fan, he would take his art to conventions and mix with the actors and say, hey, can I use your likeness on the covers? And most of the time, because it was dealt with the managers and the agents, the actors didn't know that they had been told they couldn't be on the covers. So from this era, a lot of the Doctors are back on the covers, and the artwork is absolutely amazing, as in it is artwork and it is painted, but it's very, very accurate, and it's a lot more accurate than some of the other eras that were being done by artists. Now, I don't have a particular favorite artist, and I do like some of the interpretations and some of the different ways and styles that the stories have been represented, but this is a particularly strong era because it's got the consistency, it's got a talented artist, and it's got a lot of good imagery from the shows that are being used. With these photos as well, one of the things we hadn't seen before in fandom was the sketches and the I guess the proofs that were sent to W.H. Allen before the actual final art was produced. And if we can enlarge that slide again, Dags, you can see on the top right there, the original picture for Dragon's Fire was a lot different. For those who don't know Doctor Who, it had a scene in it like the end of Raiders of the Lost Ark with a face melting, which was quite controversial for the BBC because it was quite well done, and it was cut down to only a few frames because they didn't want to, scare the kids too much. But the sketch there shows that the original artwork was going to have the face melting on it, and Target W.H. Allen said the same thing. That's a bit too hardcore for what is essentially a kid's line of books. So you can see that the face melting has been reduced just to the crystal on the final version of it. I do actually like the composition of the final version better, but it would have been interesting to see the original version finished and how graphic it would have been. I think the newer stories tended to sell better, so it made the sense for the do new stories and old one rather than do all in transmission order. Some of them were sometimes in the right issue. They absolutely were. And the other thing was they were coming to the end of the stories they couldn't novelize because they'd run out. So there was only a few Hartnells left, one or two Troughtons, and then the new ones. And this was the first time they were ever looking at doing original novels that weren't based on the series. And we're going to look at the Wilderness years, sort of when those novels were produced on a different show. We're just looking at the McCoy stuff here. If we go to the next one, again, there's some fantastic sketches that, and the reason we got these is because for the first time, Alistair Pearson was a fan. So he would send his sketches and his proofs into Doctor Who magazine, and particularly Doctor Who Bulletin, who would print them. And on the left there, you can see actually did an example of how the art was produced. So you can see which order the Daleks were done in the final piece in black and white, and then the final book cover next to it. Often as well, I do think it's quite good that the sketches went in and the editor would change them, because a lot of the time they were a bit crowded to what finally was produced. And if you look in the Happiness Patrol one there, you can see there's the same picture of the Doctor, and then there's a lot of other elements from the story around it. So there's the Pipe People and one of the Happiness Patrol members, and Fifi and the Candyman. And I put a picture of the Candyman there because he was quite controversial, because I don't know if people here have ever had Bassett's Licorice or sorts, but Bassett's thought they looked like his logo. So when the show came out, they contacted the BBC and said, hang on, this is our logo and you've turned him into a monster on Doctor Who. And they didn't sue the BBC or anything like that, but they asked if he could not be used in promotion or ever come back onto the show. And that meant that when they did the book cover, they asked if that could be removed. And I think by removing all those elements, the final book cover is a lot better than if all of them had been crammed in. And the Candyman is there. It's just the little round balls are a close-up of his head. So there was nothing offensive to Bassett's Licorice or sorts that was out on the shelves. And here we have some more of the book covers. And as you can see, there's 2 covers for Silver Nemesis. And Alistair Pearson is the only artist, I think, that released a cover. And when they got a reprint down the track, he is also the artist that replaced his own cover with a different version. And that's an interesting one because the story involves Nazis, and both of them have swastikas in the background, which would not be politically correct now, and you probably couldn't do. Another example of the sort of crowded covers that had a lot of elements taken out and they ended up being better was The Greatest Show in the Galaxy, where you can see in the sketch there in the background, it has a lot of the original elements, including the werewolf and the bus conductor and the clowns. And they've just gone with getting rid of a lot of that and having the Doctor and the gods of Ragnarok, and it makes it a better cover. So I do think it's interesting. A lot of these sketches aren't easily available because they're printed in old fanzines. But when I was going through and taking photos of them and finding them for this show, I did look at the covers in a new light, and the process that they go through isn't just we'll whack it out and there's the cover. There is feedback on them from the editors and from the authors as well also have a say that goes on the cover. So it is an interesting way to see the process, and you can see it in this era a lot more than other eras. Apparently the Candyman was conceived as something like Robert Helpman's Child Stealer for Chitty Chitty Bang Bang, but they went with Mr. Pascal's look. Yes, and the description in the book is actually totally different, where they say he's made almost of clear, hard candy, not the mismatch of different lollies that they eventually went with. And yes, the original description does sound a lot creepier than what it actually was. But the Candyman, again, has been one of those classic characters that is popular with fans as well. So it all comes down to the production designer with those ones, I guess. So the final series of Doctor Who and the last run of books also had Alistair Pearson doing the covers. And you can see, again, with what I was saying about Battlefield, it really does have that Willow, because Willow is one of my favourite movies. It always has one of those Willow vibes when you got Jean Marsh back, and had great production as well. And you can see, again, with Ghostlight, a lot of the extra pictures are taken out. And again, that's a fantastic moody cover that really represents the atmosphere of the show. And recently, some of the books were reprinted. Some of the original Target books came out about 10 years ago with new covers. And one of the original Target artists, Chris Achilleos, came out of retirement and did some, and he did one for Battlefield, which is from the very old style of the books. And because I grew up with the new style, it kind of jars seeing the Battlefield book in sort of the 70s Target book artwork style. But overall, I think the run of books were a lot more adult for child books than they'd ever been before, and the covers were also really amazing. And I think it's one of those things where the books were really great at this time, and they were the end of the run, so they're hard to get because they didn't get reprinted. And just because the show wasn't as popular with the general public at the time, they weren't coming out in hardback, so there wasn't the hardback editions, and they weren't getting huge print runs. So some of the best books that were written for the range are also now the hardest ones to procure. And we sell a lot of the Target books in the shop, and it's always these last 20 or so that everyone's after and are missing from the collection because they don't turn up very much. And this is the last 2 stories from the run. There was only a couple of books after these ones, and again you can see the sketch there, and the sketch for Survival is very similar. And the coolest thing that I thought was in the sketch is actually removed, where the original version has the cat merging into the master's silhouette, and then it's just changed in the regular version where it's just a cat and there's no master in it anymore. So that's pretty much the end of the Target range. We didn't look at the Target books that were from the first and second Doctor that were coming out at the same time, because we looked at them during those Doctors' shows, but I will do a Target book episode, like I've said, at some point down the track when Dags is feeling like having another week off. So we're moving on from the books to the DVDs, and this is another interesting era. Another interesting way for releasing things, because like the books, the DVDs weren't released in order. And so you can see, sorry, I'm not talking DVDs, I'm talking about VHS, even older than DVDs. You can see there is different eras when these things were released. And because the range took 20 years almost to come out with, one a month, they went through a lot of design changes. So some of them had artwork, some of them had photos, some of them had digital manipulation when in the early sort of days when computer-aided design was first coming in. So it was really potluck from month to month what episodes of Doctor Who would be released. You'd usually only have about 3 months warning. And because the range went for so long, fans demanded all the best episodes were released first. So when you got to the end of the range, you kind of had a lot of stories that weren't so desirable. And the Sylvester McCoy episodes, being the last couple of series, were the ones that were released at that time. So you would often get some very average stories. Colin Howard did 33 Doctor Who VHS covers with 3 not used. And those 3 came out as artwork on postcards, I think. Colin Howard is a brilliant artist, and some of his art you can see there, where Alastair Pearson mainly did the books. Colin Howard did a lot of the videos, and some of Alastair Pearson and Andrew Skilleter's book artwork was used on the videos, and you had different artists working on the videos as well. So it is one of those things where some of the video covers are absolutely amazing, and some of them are what were they thinking? If we go to the next slide, I think we've got some more video covers, and you can see again, there's a Colin Howard one in the middle there that hasn't got the logo on, and there's some of the sketch covers for the videos as well that I managed to dig up, so you can see sort of the sketches compared to the finished product. But the really interesting thing, and this is how time changes, when computer-aided design was new and suddenly you had a couple of images from Doctor Who and this spiral galaxy in different colors done by computers, I thought that was the best thing ever. Doctor Who videos finally looked adult. They didn't look kiddie, and they were using all this cutting edge technology. Now I would take the artwork over every single one of those early CG almost abominations, because that's the type of stuff that was cutting edge at the time, but so much better has been done now. It really dates it. Some people love that because it sort of gives you a snapshot of how things were at the time, and that's absolutely valid. But visually, if I was going to have a poster on my wall, a lot of the video and book art I would use, but none of the photo manipulation from CG would be up on my wall. And I guess that's the yardstick for me as to whether I like the art or not. Do the original art ever turn up as a collectible? They absolutely do, and I am absolutely spewing. This week, one of Andrew Skilleter's book covers turned up on eBay, and it is such a fabulous book cover. It was the one for the Monsters and Aliens, and it's a montage of different aliens, and I saw it and I thought, well, I'd love that, but I can never afford it because that's going to go for thousands and thousands of pounds. And then I looked at it after it had finished, and it went for 300 and something pounds, and I was spewing because that's probably only a tenth of what I thought it was going to go for. So you can find a bargain on eBay, and these things do turn up. I have never owned any of them. I nearly bought the Seeds of Doom original VHS cover. It was up on eBay about 2 years ago, and I think it went for £500. It might have been a buy it now, but because we're in the middle of lockdown, I didn't think it was the right time for me to be paying $1,000 for Doctor Who art. But they do turn up. I've got a couple of original art pages from annuals and things like that, but I've never had a Target cover or a book cover or a video cover or anything like that. I would love to own one. So if anyone out there sees this and they think they've got something I might like at a reasonable price, feel free to contact me. So we're coming up to one of the new collectibles at the time, which was Doctor Who action figures. Now, we had Action Man size action figures in the 70s, the Dennis Fisher line with Tom Baker, but Dapol are a English toy company, more popular for making British railway and train set things, but they got the Doctor Who license and they decided they were going to give Doctor Who a go. And this was during Sylvester McCoy's first year. So the first range of stuff that they released was the Doctor and Mel, the TARDIS console, a Tech Trap, which was one of the monsters from his first story, and K9, which was nothing to do with the Sylvester McCoy era, but a nice little toy. And the K9 was green as well, which makes it particularly cool. Now, these are very nostalgic for me, and they are things that I loved when I grew up. I bought this set from Minotaur, I think for about $150, which was eye-wateringly expensive for what it was at the time, because let's face it, it's like 3 Star Wars figures and a play set. So it seemed about 4 times as much as it should be. And I've spoken, I think, to Mark and a couple other people who watched this, and they got them at the same time as well. And we all remember it making us bleed because it cost so much. And we bought them, even though we didn't think they were fantastic. At the time, I remember they touted these new action figures were going to come out, and there was going to be a range as big as Star Wars, and everyone was excited. And when we got them, they weren't as good as everyone thought they were going to be. The detail was okay, the paintwork was okay, but a lot of them weren't really good representations of the characters. At the time, I guess they were about the best you could expect. They were an English company who made stuff in Britain, and I guess a lot of their technology for action figures in America was all farmed out to Asia, so a lot of the production processes were more well refined for American product than British product. Now they are incredibly charming and incredibly, again, indicative of the time, and a lot of people are going back and collecting them because even though they didn't think they were great at the time, now they're more associated with the era, what they grew up. And that happens a lot with people, where you might grow up with something and think it's horrible, and then you get nostalgic pangs for it and you decide you need to have them all. Now, Dapol was quite successful. They had the license for years and years, and it was only when the new series came out they kind of lost the license and stopped producing stuff. Ugly then and nostalgic now. I totally agree. It's absolutely true. And when I get them in the shop, they go really, really fast. There are a lot of people who collect the Dapol stuff. The Soul Greg King pays more than $2 at his garage sale when he picks them up, that's for sure. And that's some of the first range. If we go to the next slide, it's what I've done is taken one of the later Dapol catalogs that shows kind of a good range of everything they had for sale. And they did go back and do other eras. Some of it was particularly terrible. You can see there's a John Pertwee, the Third Doctor. That was one of the worst figures I have ever had. I have had pieces of popcorn that look more accurately like John Pertwee's head than that sculpt does. And again, it's one of those so bad it's good type figures. Tom Baker, what's iconic about Tom Baker's Doctor? His hat and scarf. So what did Dapol do? They didn't give him a hat and scarf, which is just mind-blowing. They just said the production cost to do a hat and a scarf wouldn't have made it worthwhile, so they did it without a hat and scarf. Sylvester McCoy had his classic question mark umbrella, and they released the black one with the red handle. And then they decided we'll release every single color and every single variant you can. And this is one of the hard things when it comes to cataloging what was actually available with Dapol. They had a factory where you could go and visit and you could make your own variants and put your own figures together. So you could find anything. There's just recently on one of the Dapol groups, yes, there is Dapol groups on Facebook, someone who used to go there and he said, I want a silver Sontaran, and he got to paint unique figures his own colors because they did a factory tour and they let them do it. Yes, that's the big thing, the anorexic Cyberman. He was incredibly spindly and not menacing at all. And then you had the smiley face Time Lords that also were not menacing or very Time Lord-like. Because new figures were, I guess, expensive, you would get them using the same figures over with different variants. So Mel, that wasn't a hugely successful or popular companion, had two versions. And in the new series, she hasn't been made at all, and they've released a lot of stuff. So Dapol definitely did stuff that hasn't been reissued with the success of character options. As you can see, there's quite a range of different figures there. There's the monsters on the far right, and you've got the Master and the Cybermen, the Tetrap, the Sea Devils and the Silurians, and some of the monsters were quite good. Some of the human figures, it was a bit beyond their technology at the time to get them more accurate than they did. That's saying that, the Doctor with the question marks on his jumper is probably more detailed than any of the Kenner Star Wars figures were at the time. So fans complain, but when you think about it, it wasn't too bad. If we go to the next slide, they also did monsters and Daleks, and the Dapol Daleks were quite good. They were probably the most accurate Daleks to be produced at that time. There have been a lot of Dalek toys over the years, and every time they've kind of been the toy company's interpretation of a Dalek, where the size is never quite right, or the colors are wrong, or the look is just wrong. Fun factoid, there was a series of fan films called Dapol Dalek using these figures animated. Yes, there's a lot of fan films, and these ones actually came out looking quite good. But then Dapol did what they always did. They made too many color variants. And when I say too many color variants, you can never get too many Daleks, can you? Yes, you can. When they made the Millennium Daleks, which were infused with glitter. So those ones in the middle on the right are the Millennium Dalek set, and you've got the glitter silver, the glitter green, the glitter blue, the glitter red, the glitter purple, and the glitter black, which really is a case of how can we reuse these molds and get people to buy them again. Dapol also went back and got the original Louise Marks toolings for the 60s Daleks and reissued them. They are some of my favourite toys from Dapol because at the time it was just impossible to get those Daleks, and for them to reissue them in the original colours, but with AA batteries instead of the C batteries, that was just perfect. And they look exactly like the originals on your shelf, so it was a cheap way to get a 60s Dalek reissue. Now they go for a bit themselves because there was probably less of them made than there were of the original 60s ones. The monsters, again, we see the range. We've kind of had a look at them before. And they did Davros. And one of the things that people joke about is Dapol got it wrong and gave him two hands. Davros only has one hand. And after they were corrected, they lopped one of his hands off. But for the next 10 years, they would do runs that had two hands for some reason. So Davros was being reissued, said, no, he's only meant to have one hand. They would change it, and then someone at the factory would forget, and you'd get two-handed Davroses. So they are quite collectible and desirable by collectors. Dapol also did in the center there, you can see Sylvester McCoy's jumper. So that was, I think, apart from Tom Baker's scarf, the first officially licensed piece of replica costume from Doctor Who. They did do Tom Baker's scarf, but that was a wearable piece of thing, which is unusual for Dapol because they were a toy company, and I never saw one of those in Australia. All the other Dapol stuff was in Minotaur and Alternate Worlds and other collectible shops, and we indeed did actually get some stuff that wasn't available in England, different colour Dalek variants, and I've got a clear TARDIS that only you can see behind me over here. Looks like a Dapol box with an empty TARDIS, but it's actually a dematerialized one. In England, they were sold with jelly babies in. For some reason, Minotaur got about 6 of them with no jelly babies and just a clear TARDIS. which is a variant that I don't think has turned up in the UK. It might be to do with, in the UK, they sold them with jelly babies in, and maybe they didn't want to export food. So we just got empty TARDISes, but it's quite a cool collectible to have. And then Dapol did diversify into other things. They did coasters and transfers and things like that. But the coolest thing about the Dapol factory was what I was mentioning earlier. You could tour it and watch the toys being made, and you could make your own toys and paint your own toys, and they would card them for you and give them to you. And if you were lucky, as I was saying, they might let you do something unique and different, which has made it very hard for Dapol completists to get everything in the entire range. Now, we're looking at the Dapol flyer and order form on the top there. Down the bottom is actually the flyer for the Dapol exhibition, because when you went through the company, and Mark, who's watching, has done this, there was also an exhibition that had Doctor Who props and costumes, the original Bessie, and you walked through this and it was like a museum of Doctor Who things. So even though they were a toy company, the guy that ran it was a fan, and even when they lost the license, they continued to have the exhibition for a while. It's one of those things I never got to visit myself. I would have loved to, but there's a lot of information out there. Now, there are a lot of variants and different color Daleks and things like that. We're not looking at all of them in this episode because you could do an entire episode on just Dapol stuff. So that was very part of the Sylvester McCoy era, and it was something that a lot of fans loved and collected from that time, but that's where we're going to leave Dapol. Except for these pictures. Sorry, there are a few variants there. Dapol did sell multi-Dalek sets, and they did that thing that every collector hates, where 7 of the Daleks were ones that you could get normally, but 1 of the Daleks was only available in the set. And Dapol were the king of doing that, where there's about 20 variants of the sets. Each one will come with a brown Dalek or a green Dalek or one that's painted a different way. They did do older sets of Daleks, so you can see there's some 60s ones there based on Power of the Daleks and some of the 60s shows. And Dapol over the years changed their packaging. The original one had the McCoy logo and a black background. They went to what's known as the rainbow card that had the diamond logo and a rainbow in the background. And then the last one, there was a couple of variants of the blue card, which is a navy blue with stars and has the John Pertwee logo. And there's a couple of different Dalek colours that were available in box sets with DVDs and other special promotions, and indeed a Christmas Dalek there, which is not mine. I found it online. It's one of the hardest sort of variants to get that was used on the Dapol Christmas tree. I did get to go to the Momi exhibition in about 1991 actually, and I've got video of that that I'll have to get and digitalize sometime. I think this time we are moving on from Dapol though to one of my favorite pieces of merchandise. This isn't one of my favorite pieces of merchandise from the era, it's just one of my favorite pieces of merchandise ever. And that is the Bally Doctor Who pinball machine. Now, we've talked about pinball machines on the show before, and there's a classic era of pinball machines in the 90s. There are ones that are regarded as the best machines ever made from that period. There's the Addams Family and the Twilight Zone and the Indiana Jones. And the Doctor Who pinball machine was also one of the highly regarded ones, not just by Doctor Who fans, but by pinball machine enthusiasts, because it has such good gameplay. And the Doctor Who pinball machine that we can see there is one of the electronic ones, where not only do you just play pinball, but the ball can be taken up and then you play a video game in the dot matrix display as well. And the game mechanics are quite interesting. For those who play pinball casually, you might just hit the ball around. For those who are more serious, you can use the paddles to open different games. And this one had different games based on the Doctor. So you would be able to, if you were accurate enough, choose the different missions that you wanted to do based on the Doctor and based on the way that you operated the machine. So each of the Doctor was represented. It was particularly good because a lot of them, they went back and got them to do voice work. So the machine actually plays new recordings from various Doctors as you play the game. Whoever designed the game was obviously a fan of the show, because hidden in the artwork are lots of more obscure things like the Whomobile and different various monsters and some of the companions who you wouldn't know unless you were a fan of the show. So it is one of those prized possessions for Doctor Who fans. If we go to the next slide, we can see some of the support material that was also released for the show, for the game. So there was a flyer which was quite colourful and quite nice that advertises the game and the gameplay. And then there was a play map of the play field that tells you how to operate different modes within the game and how to score and how to change the gameplay. And then the Dalek on the right there is an interesting thing. It's the topper that goes on top of the pinball machine. So some of the games had a fully operating Dalek on the top, some of them didn't, and some of them had the Dalek and you could buy motors to turn it into a fully operating one. We've got the manual there and the Translight, which is the artwork that is lit up from behind at the bottom. And then on the bottom left, there's some of the extra things you could get, which were key rings and also extra vinyl pictures that you could put into the game and that you could enhance your own game by using. So there's speaker boxes, and over the speaker boxes, you could put Doctor Who logos and different things. So it was quite a well-supported game, and it was quite a popular one, and it is one that I actually bought for myself for my 30th birthday. So if we go to the next slide, yes, that is the Doctor Who pinball machine at my parents' place, because my house wasn't big enough to house it. You buy these things and then you go, oh, where am I going to put them? And I didn't want to put it in the garage. And then on the right is me playing the Doctor Who pinball machine at my parents' house, and my son looking in awe, thinking, what an awesome dad I have. Like, he owns a pinball machine. Usually you have to go to Time Zone to play these. Being the capitalist dog I am, I sold it for my 40th birthday, though, so I kept it for about 10 years. I don't know if anyone here has owned a pinball machine, but they are an absolute huge piece of furniture. When you see them in Time Zone, you think, oh yeah, I'd love to have one in a room. When you get them outside of a big area like Time Zone and put them in a bedroom, they actually take up the whole bedroom. You need a whole level to sort of store them, or someone who's got a man cave that might have a large area to put one in. But it is one of the nicest pieces of Doctor Who merchandise ever produced. And I think when I bought mine, it was about $2,000. And when I sold it, it was about $5,000. Now they go for over $10,000. So they're actually quite a good investment. Dags, you've popped up.
Yeah, well, when it comes to pinball machines, I finally got something to say. Yeah, just a quick out of curiosity, do you know where your machine ever ended up? Did it end up in a collection? Did you ever follow where its path led it to?
Well, it's interesting. I bought it in Singapore, and I got the one in Singapore because it had been upstairs in a gallery with no lights, and the Doctor Who one was really prone to fading on the cabinet, and all the ones I could find locally were faded. So a pinball warehouse in Bayswater imported one from Singapore because I wanted a mint one, and I sold it to our friend Peter, and then Peter sold it on, and I don't know where it went to after he sold it on.
Okay, that's right. Interesting little bit of history. So yes, the dude had his own pinball machine. So yes, so and some people go to the kitchen to have a breakfast, and he goes in there to play a game. Love it.
If I had known I was going to open my own shop, I would have probably kept it to have in the shop. But there you go. You don't know these things, do you?
I love that you say, oh, if you had it known you're going to open the shop, you would have put it in the shop. Dude, there's no room in the shop for a pinball machine.
I'd have made it fit. It'd go in the toilet.
Love it. Very, very cool. All right, back to your regular program.
This is one of the things that blows my mind. We're looking at the records from the era, and we have seen over the years there have been different Doctor Who records that have been released. And the record that has been the most popular and had the most releases and variants is actually not the Doctor Who theme. It is Doctor in the TARDIS, which is a pop song that came out that sampled the Doctor Who theme and used the KLF actually put it together using samples from the show, and also Daleks singing different lines and talking over the top of it. And that is Ford Time Lord, who purportedly recorded the album, The Car. And there was even a video clip for it that used to be played quite a lot. Still get it. Sometimes I still watch ice hockey and it gets played, which blows my mind. And it got to number 2 in Australia and in the UK and was on top of the Pops, the Time Lords. It's interesting that the Doctor Who bulletin there has Time Lord Mania and has a publicity photo of the Time Lords with the Daleks. I cannot find that photo online anywhere. So that's one of those things that's been lost into the mists of time, apart from on the cover of that fanzine. Over my collecting, they aren't all my records. They're a friend's. I've got a couple of them, but I didn't collect every single variant. I don't know if people would remember if they collected Countdown magazine and Smash Hit and stuff like that. They'd print the lyrics to songs because you would have songs and you wouldn't know the lyrics. I mean, if you were listening to Hammerhead by James Rain, who knows what he was singing? But then Smash Hits would come out and you go, oh, he's saying that's Silken Slip of Evil and not something totally different. They brought out the lyrics for Doctor in the TARDIS, which they really didn't need to do because most of it is Doctor Who, Doctor Who, Doctor Who, Doctor Who. But there you go. They did it in Smash Hits.
I had this record, and what was interesting is you actually listened to the B-side. The B-side was actually really good. It was the theme song of Doctor Who, but without the rock, and because it was based on the song rock and roll,
yeah,
and with all that taken out. And I actually found the B-side was actually more enjoyable to listen to the A-side. And so when I used to do sci-fi banquets, I would actually mix half the B-side and then mix half the A-side because it just had a really interesting variation of the main theme tune. And for that reason, a lot of people probably didn't play the B-side, but the B-side was well worth checking out. I really got a lot out of it.
I have another question for you while you're on. This is a fandom question. There were 2 big sci-fi tracks from sci-fi franchises in the 80s. There was Star Trekkin' by the Firm for Star Trek, and there was Doctor in the TARDIS by the Time Lords for Doctor Who. What was better?
The Star Trekkin' was annoying to listen to if you heard it too many times. Just as an aside, we had a bowling day with the Star Trek fan club, and it was on the jukebox, and someone ended up playing it 7 times. After 7 times, you got pretty sick of it. I'm going to still stick with the B-side of Doctor in the TARDIS. That was the best of the 3. They were good, and look, the novelty songs. If you're going to pick one left set off the center, it was "I'll Be Back" by Arnie and the Terminators. Now that's a song I reckon outstripped the other.
There's a message from the future. It's Arnie etiquette. P's and Q's just make you lose the things that you should get. That's an obscure one, but well done.
Yeah. I played that at a banquet too, and everybody just looked at me and said, "What the hell is that?" So anyway,
that one was never released as a record. It was only a single.
Yeah. And they had to change the spelling of Arnie because it couldn't be because it was copyright issues. And when they showed the pictures, the back of him as he was walking around the corner. You can still get it online. Arnie and the Terminators, I'll Be Back, an absolute classic because after Terminator 2 came out. But hasta la vista, baby. But anyway, back to your show.
No problem. And here's just some more shots from the video of Doctor in the TARDIS, which had unusually square Daleks where you could see the feet of the people inside them. And who would have known the best way to kill a Dalek is for a car to drive over them. And that really, really did kill them. I actually probably agree as well. The B-side was the best version of it. Down in the bottom left corner there, someone has gone to the trouble of getting a car or a model kit and actually customizing it into the KLF Ford Time Lord, and I don't know if you can see it. There is one of the little Doctor in the TARDIS Daleks in the back, and that was one of those interesting things I found while I was researching this show that I never knew existed, and then as soon as I saw, go, gee, I'd like that in my collection. Probably a one-off though, so maybe not something you can find online, but I thought it was worth noting. Now we're going to go away from the Time Lords and back to sort of the regular vinyl, and through this era there was a lot of vinyl that came out. And there was one of those things, if you were a nerd, which I was, and a geek, which I am, and got teased about Doctor Who, this is one of those things that really you go, yeah, I can understand why I get teased. Doctor Who, they decided to release the world's first square CD. So why they decided to do this, I don't know, because it meant it didn't play in about 80% of CD players. It only played on the CD players where you could attach the CD to the spindle in the middle rather than drop it in the tray. It has a warning on it, may damage your CD player, which means if you dropped it in one in the tray and turned it on, it often span off into the inner workings of the CD player and ruined your CD player. Why anyone thought a square CD was a good idea, I don't know. And the other thing about getting this CD, you can see the one in the middle is silver and the one on the bottom is sort of rainbow colored. Now, that is not deliberate. What they did, they got round CDs and they just cut them so they were square. But the thing with CDs, they have a protective layer on them. And if you cut a CD, things can get into that protective layer underneath it. So all of these ones have got disc rot because they cut off the edges which protect the disc rot, which is basically air and water getting underneath and the layers separating. So it is one of those things where it looks bad, it's a bad idea, and it doesn't last long, and then it isn't a great thing anyway. So yeah, square CD, interesting novelty, but not the greatest way to go. Now, during the Sylvester McCoy period, it was the 25th anniversary of the show. And they did release a lot of interesting things for the 25th anniversary. And one of the things they released, which I thought was really good, was the Doctor Who, the music for the 25th anniversary. And one side of it was mainly newer stuff from the Sylvester McCoy era, and then the other side, it was highlights from other eras of the show. But the thing that I thought was best, it had different versions of the theme. And some of the versions of the theme are quite hard to get. So having it on the one disc was quite good, especially if you were like me and you just like to hear the Doctor Who theme over and over and over so your parents knew how cool you were. Then there's some other stuff that came out at the time. Myths and Legends by Mark Ayres, who was one of the musicians that did Doctor Who stuff. There's, of course, the tape of it. And David Banks, who was the cyber leader, released a book at the time called Cybermen. And he narrated and wrote some of the CD, they only came out on tape actually, stories and histories of the Cybermen. So you could get these and you could whack them on your tape player before there were iPads and iPods and stuff like that. And the soothing tones of David Banks talking in monotone as a Cybermen could slowly put you to sleep each night. So it is an interesting era to collect recordings because there's a diverse amount of stuff. Now, one of the things people might remember are flexi discs. And if we go to the next slide, Doctor Who magazine gave away a flexi disc at the time. And it's one of the hardest giveaways to get from the magazine. I think a lot of people pulled it off and wanted to see what the cover was underneath, which was a nice painting of the Daleks, and it was Absalom Dalek Killer Slaves of Cain. And I haven't listened to it for so long, I can't actually remember what's on it, but it is one of those interesting collectibles that came as a flexi disc on Doctor Who magazine, then got a vinyl release, then got a vinyl release with a picture sleeve, and then got a 12-inch release. So all types of things were available with that release. Now, underneath that, we're slipping back to Daypol, but I didn't put these with the main Daypol because they also released a series of yo-yos. And they're particularly hard to get, but I think the interesting one is the one in the middle where they packaged it on a soccer style backing card. And I can only presume that they did do soccer, or as you say in England, football yo-yos. And they had an excess of these cards, so they just decided to whack the Doctor Who ones on the excess. So there's 3 different versions of the Doctor Who yo-yo there. 2 of them have one of the logos, and the third one has a different logo. As far as I know, all of them come with different color yo-yo centers, and some of them even have different color strings. But again, they're so obscure, I do not know exactly how many different ones there are and how many variants they are. So they are a newer version of merchandise that is still slipped into obscurity. During this time, there were also mugs and cups and things like that were produced. A lot of stuff came out for the 25th anniversary. And there is, of course, the classic one there with the Doctor Who theme, diddly dum, and the TARDIS as the bouncing ball. And also another mug that just has the Sylvester McCoy logo. So interesting bits and pieces if you're a collector. Now, the 25th anniversary was marked with a not Radio Times cover. The Radio Times had promised that there would be a Doctor Who cover for the 25th anniversary. Radio Times is, of course, the TV guide for British television. They decided to go with The Lion, the Witch and the Wardrobe, which was a prestige children's show that was being made and came out on the same day, and I can understand that that is a popular franchise and a lot of money went into it. The Doctor Who that came out at that time, Silver Nemesis, is probably been watched by 1 million more people than that TV show, which is dated very, very horribly. The Doctor Who still had quite a good content inside the magazine. It had a 3-page article and in colour, which is good for radio times during the time when Doctor Who wasn't perceived as popular and was more of a sort of, a bit of a nerdy curio. On the right there, it's unusual. The New Zealand Listener, which was the New Zealand version of TV Guide, did have a cover. And they've only had a couple of covers in the entire history of Doctor Who. And they went with one and a little handout book as well. Doctor Who magazine, of course, put out a 25th anniversary special. And DWB, Doctor Who Bulletin, put out like that rainbow poster down the bottom. And that was the fold around cover of the 25th anniversary issue as well. So for the 25th anniversary, there was a little bit of stuff released, but not nearly as much as the 20th, because by this time, Doctor Who was kind of not perceived as the popular property and wasn't licensed by as many people as it had been before this era. Here's a couple of other things. 25 Glorious Years was put out by Peter Haining, who had put out hard coffee table, hardback books for, this is about the 4th or 5th one over the years. And some of the older ones were reissued with the McCoy logo. I know I've got like a Celebration, which was the 20th anniversary one, reissued at the time with the McCoy logo. There's a 25th anniversary poster, and there's the cast card magazines that you could, postcards you could send off to the BBC and buy at some collectible shops of the 7th Doctor and 2 different versions of Ace. And Ace was such a popular companion, she sold out, well, her postcards were given away very, very fast, and they updated one for the second run of postcards. So one of the few companions that got different postcards in that range. One of the nicer items, I got a signed one, but I can't find where I have actually put it, is that Doctor Who First Day cover. There have been since then many, many Doctor Who First Day covers, but that was the first really notable one that had the opening credits and was a special edition for the 25th anniversary of the show. And they came out and you could buy the signed version, which I bought, and like I said, I couldn't find to put on the show. And after that, there's a shop in England called the Stamp Centre that basically released First Day covers for just about every single episode of the show, especially when the new series was out. And you could do a rip it off the card on First Day covers for Doctor Who. And a lot of people wouldn't even know they exist, but there's hundreds of them. And a lot of them you could get signed, multiple signed, and different versions of them too. But it all started off with that one in the Sylvester McCoy era. And we're coming to the end of the show. We've covered a lot of stuff. And one of the things I could not really find a lot of information online about was T-shirts from the time. And I've only got that photo because they are from my garage, actually. And a lot of them I actually got in the UK when I went over for one of the exhibitions. Those light lemon ones, of course, when you buy lemon T-shirts with gold Cybermen and green Daleks and you bring them back and you wear them to school, everybody thinks you're the coolest person ever. And you don't get teased and you don't get beaten at all. But there were a lot of Doctor Who T-shirts from that time, and I bought most of them, and I proudly wore all of them. So you did at the time hear of people who never wore the same outfit twice. These are just my Doctor Who T-shirts. I know in year 12, when we had free dress, because we have school uniform up until year 12, I wore a different nerdy sci-fi T-shirt every day for the whole year. So I must have been about 100 different ones at the time, and Doctor Who was in rotation. And that really did cement me as super popular with all the girls in high school. So this is kind of, Dad is coming back for a comment on that.
I've been listening to this and I think I've got to stick my nose in at some point. And for those who are wondering, if you're seeing all these blue stains on the shirts, that's because that's from Jay's Blue, the Blue Lou stuff, because when Aaron's head was getting stuck down the daddies.
No, I was, well, we talked about Doctor in the TARDIS before. There was a time I was in year 11 when that came out, and there was a couple of weeks where a bunch of girls just followed behind me chanting that song, and I just felt like the lowest ever. But there we go. That's one of my childhood memories, being teased about Doctor in the TARDIS. I thought, wow, we've made it. Doctor Who has made it to number 2 in the charts. No, it just gave bullies more ammunition to tease me with.
Well, we still love you. That's the most important thing. I think it's your final slide, actually.
It is. We're coming to the end of the era. Now, there is a big era in between that we've skipped called Wilderness. Yes, that's the royal flush for Doctor Who fans. There is a big era we've skipped called the Wilderness years, and strangely enough, there is just as much merchandise for Sylvester McCoy released in that as there was during the 3 years he was actually the Doctor. But we will come back and look at the Wilderness years. But I thought we'd finish it off by Bidding Adieu, which is a video diary of the making of Paul McGann's American Doctor Who movie. And it's very fitting, I think. You have a picture of Sylvester McCoy, who came back after, I think it was about 8 years, to film sort of the cameo at the start of the movie and hand the TARDIS keys over to Paul McGann, which is something that he always wanted to do because it hadn't happened when he started as the Doctor and Colin Baker had been fired. So you can quite understand why Colin Baker didn't want to come back and do that one scene. So I thought that was a nice place to sort of end our nostalgic look at this era. I know we haven't covered absolutely everything because there are just so many magazines and so many books and so many Dapol figures at this time. But I think it's been a good indication of different merchandise that was available over the time. Of course, there's other things that couldn't make it into the show because of the time limit. But I hope everyone's enjoyed our final look at classic Doctor Who. I know Dags likes it's our final look at classic Doctor Who. But thanks for being around, and thanks for the comments. And we will be looking at other Doctor Who at some point, I'm sure. But that kind of wraps up our look at the first 7 Doctors on the BBC show. What have you thought of that, Dags?
When my other half, Lynn, asked me, so what's the theme on tonight? And I go, Docky effing Who again? And she goes, oh, not again. Is it still going? No, it's been really good, actually. Really enjoyed it. And I'm going to admit, even I've seen things I didn't know before. And it's been absolutely fantastic. So all I can say is if you got your Dapol Docky Who figures, just rip them off the card because no one gives a rat's ass about them, especially those Millennium Daleks, mate. How good is that? My Dapol Doctor Who figures are mint on card, and I'm going against my own advice and not ripping it off the card. Very, very good. All right, so when we finish this show, go away and have a bit of a woo, diddling, 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 diddling. And don't forget, if you want to talk a lot more about Docky Who, pop into Aaron's store. I tell you what, he can never get enough of it. That's the most important thing. And it's been, I've got to admit, I've actually quite enjoyed it. It's been quite fun. So, all right, guys, we're going to buzz off, leave it to a party hard rock on. Next week, we've actually got a special guest joining the show, but we're not going to tell you who it is. So you're going to have to join in next Wednesday to find out what's going on. But it is very current, very exciting. And Aaron, what do you reckon on, son?
We've bagged ourselves an excellent guest, and it's going to be an excellent show.
Absolutely fantastic. All right, we'll leave you to a party hard rock on, everybody, and we'll see you next week. Okay, take care.
Good night, guys.